It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. More migrant misery for the government. Asylum applications reach a record high and figures show small boat crossings and the use of asylum hotels are both up under Labour. Israel's Prime Minister set to grant final approval for the operation to seize Gaza City, even as he orders new talks to free the hostages and end the war. Russia's foreign minister accuses European leaders of trying to undermine progress made by Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Students received their GCSE results with a fall in pass rates in English and maths, as well as a persistent regional and gender divide. Smiling on death row. Sky News speaks to an ISIS fighter captured by Somali forces who says he has no regrets. Plus, wildfire emergency. A major study finds the number of people affected worldwide is increasing by almost 8 million every year. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. The government says it is restoring order to a broken asylum system, but figures out today don't back up those claims. Asylum applications hit a record high in the year to June, and more than 32,000 illegal immigrants are currently being housed in hotels, up 8% on last year, before Labour took office. The figures come just days after the High Court ruled that asylum seekers should be removed from the Bell Hotel in Epping. And councils across the country, including some controlled by Labour, are considering their own legal action. Our North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi reports.
Asylum seekers have been housed in this hotel on the Wirral for 5 years, but protests only started 3 weeks ago, driven by a proposal by the Home Office to move out the families with children who are here and house single men instead.
We have got enough wrong ones of our own. We don't need to be importing any more. If they were coming legally, then that's fine, but coming on the boats and then being put into areas where there's schools, there's nurseries, there's vulnerable children, and we know nothing about them, I think it's a risk to our local area.
New government data shows in this area there's just over 700 asylum seekers, and numbers have in fact slightly dropped over the last year. But for some local residents, a feeling of unease has grown.
I wouldn't even have 100 Englishmen in that. You know, families, they integrate into the population, they go to the schools along with every other child here. You know, and I just think men on their own, why have they left their women and children there?
The Labour-run council said it was asking the government to reconsider its plan and would look at mirroring Epping Council in a court challenge to get the hotel shut.
There seems to be this mindset of so-called good refugees and bad refugees, and a constant theme of they're all young men of military age, they're all rapists, paedophiles, murderers. This sort of thing, we don't see that. As a charity, we are dealing with normal people who are fleeing the most appalling terrors: war, conflict, persecution, modern-day slavery, torture, you name it.
Only a very small number of asylum seekers are housed in hotels in this area. Only 5%, in fact, are in hotels. The rest are in different types of accommodation. But the protests here, although rooted in very local concerns when you speak to people, have become part of this wider question about illegal migration in general, but also what the government is seen to be doing about it.
Doesn't seem to be anything to curtail people. They say, oh yeah, we'll do that, and then nothing happens.
It makes me feel really sad, actually. I'd like to see people be welcomed in our country and looked after. And if they're not meant to be here and they're here for the wrong reasons, well, OK, we don't grant them asylum.
Get them on the boats, put them back. That's all I can say, really. I get a bit angry.
You get a bit angry. What is it about it that makes you angry?
It just riles me to think we've got our own problems and the homeless. And like I say, in there given everything.
The local council told us it wants to work with the government to find solutions that are fair and compassionate. People outside this hotel just want to see something done. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, the Wirral.
Well, the pressure on the government over hotels comes as ministers also grapple with record numbers of people crossing the channel in small boats. Our political correspondent Rob Powell has been looking at the numbers.
There's been a lot of focus this week on asylum hotels and boat crossings, and we'll come to that. But it's probably worth looking first at the overall migration figures that include regular legal migration too. And you can see it's coming down. 30% fall in 2025 in these figures compared to the 12 months previous, down from the peak in 2023, but still a fair bit higher than 2019 and the pre-Brexit years. Now, what's driving that? Well, it's predominantly a drop in the number of work visas being given out. That's this bar here, the dark bar. You can see the big section in 2024, it's come down substantially in this set. That, in turn, is being driven by far fewer health and care visas being given out. For care workers alone, the drop is almost 90%. Now, a large part of that is because of reforms put through by the previous Conservative government, but Labour has also been putting measures through, and those should bring down the overall broader numbers eventually. If you look at the bottom, though, the bright blue bar down here, that is small boat crossings, and you can see it makes up a relatively tiny percentage of the overall migration figure. They're politically important, though, and this data shows that they have gone up 38% compared to the year before, close to the peak in June 2023. Now, that in turn has driven up asylum applications. That's the green line here. They are up to a record high. You can see the black line is initial decisions made by the Home Office. They're doing pretty well. It's higher than it has been, but because of the backlog of applications and more people appealing when they're rejected, that all pushes up the number of people that need to be housed. And that is what has been causing issues with accommodation. Until 2023, you can see here, most people, the green block, were in regular residential accommodation. That's where asylum seekers were generally going. But then you had small boat crossings picking up, asylum claims picking up, and hotels started to be used, and they are far more expensive. And we now know that 12 months after Labour took office in June this year, just over 32,000 people were in hotels, slightly down on where it was 3 months before, substantially down on the peak in 2023, but crucially 8% higher on 1 year before when the Tories left office.
Rob Powell there. Israel's ambassador to the UK was summoned to the Foreign Office today over the country's plans for a major new settlement in the West Bank. It comes as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's set to give final approval to the operation to seize Gaza City, while also negotiating the release of the hostages and ending the war on what he called terms acceptable to Israel. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons reports.
On the streets of Gaza City, there are glimpses of normality. A wet shave, freshly made falafel. But all around, the scars of destruction. People here are beginning to gather their possessions and move out. Aware that Israel is about to encircle their city, many here are hungry. Most are fearful and furious.
It's so tragic, truly tragic. They're negotiating while people lie out here in the streets. This ceasefire should have happened long ago. Every second, more martyrs are killed, more homes are destroyed, and more people are displaced.
Israel's assault has started already. It says it plans to flush Hamas out of this city, and it's mobilised another 60,000 reservists. This is a huge military operation.
We will deepen the damage to Hamas in Gaza City, a stronghold of governmental and military terror for the terrorist organisation. We will deepen the damage to the terror infrastructure above and below the ground and sever the population's dependence on Hamas.
Israel is also attacking other sites. This is Deir al-Balah. The government has now said it will enter into negotiations over the end of the war, but there are no promises, despite international pressure.
It is vital to reach immediately a ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, and to avoid the massive deaths and destruction that a military operation against Gaza City would inevitably cause.
But Israel is unapologetic, insistent that its show of military might is what has forced Hamas into a corner. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu adamant he will only sign a ceasefire that sees the release of all the hostages at once. And crucially, the United States is still backing him.
Israel has to make this decision and has to live with whatever decision they make. But President Trump is fully supportive of making sure that Hamas knows that from the U.S. perspective, they have to disarm. They have to give up and let all the hostages go.
Back in Gaza City, some flee, but most wait. There are hundreds of thousands of weary, hungry people here, aware their city is once more in Israel's crosshairs. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
The Church of England has apologised after a former priest who ran a rave-inspired cult group was convicted of sexual offences against 9 women. Christopher Brain was the leader of the 9 o'clock service in Sheffield in the 1980s and 90s. Yesterday, he was found guilty of 17 counts of indecent assault. Our chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam reports.
Chris Brain was the leader of the 9 o'clock service, a rave-inspired evangelical movement. But allegations he was in fact a cult leader who sexually abused young women featured in this BBC documentary Breach of Faith, with this admission.
For a priest in a church setting, I'd have to say I was involved in improper sexual contact with a number of women. Yeah.
30 years on, the former priest has been convicted. His trial heard he dominated and abused his position to sexually assault women, isolating them from friends and family and brainwashing them. Throughout the 80s and 90s, first at St Thomas Church in Sheffield, the 9 o'clock service was seen as a groundbreaking success story, bringing in a congregation of 18 to 30-year-olds and encouraged by the Church of England. By the time it moved to this larger venue in the city, it was attracting up to 600 people to its Sunday evening services. There was talk of expanding them across the country. Some saw Brain as a prophet, his trial was told. In fact, the prosecution said he spoke psychobabble to vulnerable young women who'd suffered trauma, telling them they could be healed through sexual contact with him. The court was shown a list of rules given to a team of women known as the Lycra Nuns, set up to care for Brain and his family, detailed instructions on how to prepare meals, clean the house and care for the family dog. Some of the women were also expected to put Brain to bed. The former priest was convicted of 17 counts of indecent assault against 9 women. He was cleared of 15 further counts, and the jury was unable to reach a verdict on 5 more.
This is a case that could and should have been prosecuted 30 years ago. Justice has been a long time coming, but it's very good that there's been a measure of justice for at least some of the victims in this case. These events happened on the Church of England's watch. Brain was their man, he was their priest, they promoted him. And I think they have major questions to answer about how this was able to go on for so long, despite the red flags that were being raised along the way.
In a statement, the Bishop of Sheffield, Pete Wilcox, said, "What happened was an appalling abuse of power and leadership that should never have occurred. Where concerns were raised in the past and were not acted upon properly, that was a failing of the Church. For those institutional failures, I offer an unreserved apology." The 9 o'clock service collapsed in 1994 after allegations were made about Brain. He resigned holy orders the following year. He said the allegations had destroyed his life. In court, though, he was described as a man who would pick off women he viewed as vulnerable. He was, one woman said, a predator, hiding in plain sight. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Russia's foreign minister has accused Western countries of trying to undermine progress made by Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska last week. Sergei Lavrov accused the coalition of the willing, the European countries pushing for security guarantees for Ukraine, of trying to shift the focus away from solving what he called the root causes of the war. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett has more.
I think these latest comments from Sergei Lavrov make it pretty clear that Russia is in no hurry to reach a peace deal, because for a second day in a row now, Russia's foreign minister has poured some pretty cold water on Donald Trump's attempts to end the conflict. On the issue of security guarantees for Ukraine, he called the current discussions hopeless because they don't involve Moscow. You might remember a few days ago, Washington said that Russia had agreed to NATO-style security guarantees for Ukraine in the future, but details still haven't been forthcoming. So everyone's trying to work out what that looks like. Europe has raised the prospects of putting boots on the ground, but that's clearly not gone down well in Russia, with Sergei Lavrov accusing Europe today of trying to undermine the progress, he said, made at last week's summit in Alaska between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. I think trying to drive a wedge there between Europe and the US, hoping the US president doesn't get swayed by Europe's concern. And he said that the only guarantee Russia would be willing to accept is one that would involve them, essentially giving them a veto over how Ukraine is defended in the future. And that's clearly not something Kyiv is going to sign up to. So an agreement on security guarantees still seems as distant as ever, and so does this potential meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. On that, Sergei Lavrov said that there are issues that need to be resolved first, trotting out that common line we hear that all these caveats need to be sorted out first. Basically, Moscow doesn't see Zelensky as a legitimate leader of Ukraine, and Lavrov said that that needs to be ironed out before any peace deal is signed. So despite all this optimism we've had this week from Donald Trump that we are closer to a peace deal, two fundamental stumbling blocks seem to remain, and Moscow is in no obvious hurry to find a way round that. And despite Russia's talk of peace, a lot of war remains, with this latest attack on Ukraine last night being the biggest in more than a month. According to Kyiv, Russia fired 574 drones and 40 missiles, and among the sites hit was this American electronics factory. According to Ukraine, it produces consumer electronics, coffee machines, but that was a site that was hit, a lot of people injured there. It'll be interesting to see how Donald Trump reacts to that. All we've heard from the US president is a fairly cryptic post on social media in which he says, "It's very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country." Potentially he's signalling there that the door is open to more US military support for Ukraine. We don't know, but everyone's scratching their heads, and I'm sure the Kremlin is, as to what exactly Donald Trump means there.
The proportion of GCSE entries scoring a decent pass fell again this year. 67.4% of entries were awarded at least a grade 4, down by 0.2%, and the divides by region and gender persist. North East England had the lowest percentage awarded a grade 7 or higher, with just under 18% of entries. London had the highest proportion of teenagers awarded the top grades at around 28%. Of the 16-year-old students who took 7 or more GCSEs, 5.5% achieved all grades of 7 or above in England. Of those students, just under 40% were boys, while just over 60% were girls. Our education reporter, Anjan Piabakos, reports.
All right, well, let's start here.
Mind the gap.
Thank you. Good luck.
Girls are doing better than boys again at GCSEs, and it's a worry at the top of government.
I got an 8 in history, that's good. Even though I thought I was super sick in the exam, and I thought it was just writing psychology as well.
The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has made it clear that addressing the underachievement of boys is a priority, with a focus on white working class boys.
It was what I expected mostly. There was a bit lower than some subjects, and 1 mark off a 9 in maths isn't that bad.
The day before the results come out, we're all thinking about it and trying not to talk about it. And then we came in this morning and he had really high hopes. And so he's a little bit disappointed with some of the grades. And it's hard to see him opening the envelope and seeing his face drop a little bit.
But there are also other differences and gaps that these results show us, depending on where you are in the country. Bridget Phillipson said, but while results today are stable, once again we are seeing unacceptable gaps for young people in different parts of the country. I'm absolutely determined to make sure every young person, wherever they live, has the opportunities they deserve. And what comes next for the students who have got their results today? And what are the options for those students who don't want to do A-levels?
I don't think A-levels are the be-all and end-all for absolutely every child. So the amount of options there are for people out there is vast. Thinking ahead, a lot of our students will want to go to university, and university's, it's expensive now. And I think, certainly compared to when I was doing this, students know what they want. They want to make sure they're going to university for the right reasons, and they're very conscientious about the choices they make at A-level.
And the government say they want to ensure that young people are able to access a range of possibilities.
Lots of opportunities being talked about, I think, at schools right across the nation today, whether it's A-levels, T-levels, apprenticeships, which are a fantastic route for a lot of young people, and also vocational qualifications that they'll be able to take. So we really want to make sure that as many opportunities are available for young people.
Are you happy?
Today's results remind us that educational inequalities still exist, because boys' underachievement isn't just an anecdote during results season. It's an issue which could have far-reaching implications for generations to come. Anjum Piabakos, Sky News.
The wife of a Conservative councillor who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred on the day of the Southport murders has been released from prison. Lucy Connolly was sentenced to 31 months in prison in October after pleading guilty to publishing threatening or abusive material on X. In an apparent reference to asylum seekers, she wrote, "Mass deportation now, set fire to all the hotels. If that makes me racist, so be it." A man has been charged with the murder of ice cream seller Shahzad Khan in Wembley on Tuesday. Mr. Khan, who was 41, was pronounced dead at the scene after police responded to reports of an altercation. 26-year-old Zahir Zarour has been charged with murder and possession of a bladed article. The government has taken control of the UK's third largest steelworks in a bid to save 1,450 jobs. Speciality Steel, which is part of the Liberty Steel empire, had been pushed into compulsory liquidation. Ongoing wages and costs will be covered by the government until a buyer is found. A teenager who planned to carry out a terror attack at a mosque has been sentenced to 10 years in custody. The boy, who can't be named for legal reasons, was 16 when he was arrested in January, when police caught him on his way to burn down Inverclyde Muslim Centre in Greenock. Now 17, he pleaded guilty to terrorism charges. To Somalia now, and the second of our special reports into the hunt for ISIS militants. Intelligence suggests the north of the country is now home to the group's global headquarters. Hundreds of foreign fighters are being recruited and trained in the mountains of Puntland, and it's from there that money is being moved around the world to fund terror attacks, as our special correspondent Alex Crawford reports.
It is one of the world's most dangerous waters, ruthlessly exploited by arms dealers and people smugglers, and fantastically challenging to control.
Now we have species boat.
Fishermen are often used as cover, coerced or paid to take part. We're only a few hours boat ride away from Yemen, and this is a favoured route to transport weapons and fighters in and out of Somalia.
Looks like they're just fishermen on this occasion. I think that's the problem. It's such a large area and there's so many boats around here. Hard to know who is a genuine fisherman and who's a smuggler.
Let's go.
Counter-terrorism officials tell us the Yemeni Houthis are now coordinating with ISIS cells based in the north of Somalia. And this sea route is one of the ways they're transporting new foreign recruits from Yemen and across the world.
These people are not only local people, but international terrorists who are making money and selling the weapons.
Just a few months earlier, Islamic State militants were causing mayhem in the key port city of Bosaso, setting off bombs and extorting money from shop owners and businesses to fund terror attacks in Somalia and beyond.
Whoa, this is from Daesh shooting.
I was coming from beside the police station with my groceries, and they detonated an IED.
The Puntland forces have taken the battle to the mountainous north, where ISIS fighters have dug in, terrorised and taken over communities, forcing thousands to flee. The trail led them to dozens of hideouts in caves.
You can see how they've chiselled into the rock. There's a cave there, one round the corner there. Just really built in their defences. These are natural defences. There's a toilet here. Along here, there's a cooking area where they did it under the rocks so that no one who was flying above could see the smoke. Another little cave, an inlet there. And over all this area, they had a bird's eye view and could keep control of the people down below in the valley.
They have a lot of power in the area, and had this military offensive not started, they would be an even greater threat to the world today. For ISIS to exist here, we must not exist, and we're not going to let that happen.
The Somali forces found hard drives here, filled with homemade videos filmed by ISIS fighters with their families and children. It gives an insight into their daily activities. But there are also images showing them setting off for battle. And despite the simplicity of their lives in these remote areas, the SIM cards retrieved from ISIS phones also show they were moving tens of thousands of dollars around the world to other extremist groups.
Our intel people found that there have been evidence on crypto communications by ISIS, but they also use other methods. I told you that they extort the money from here locally, then they can send the money by goats, for instance, to other countries. They can send the money by gold. And then when they sell in Dubai or in other places, they again use that money for other purposes, for instance, buying like drones or explosives.
Multiple passports and dozens of IDs have been retrieved from the battlefield, showing ISIS recruits from around the world have been lured to the Horn of Africa. We've been given exclusive access to captured foreign fighters brought from prison to see us in a secure location. The first is a Moroccan who says he joined up for money, but soon realized ISIS wanted him to be a suicide bomber.
When they told me I had to wear a suicide vest and target Puntland forces, I said, this is different to what you told me. I was told I'd make money. I didn't want to die, so I escaped.
The second prisoner is considered more dangerous. He's from Yemen, accused of being an ISIS commander, sniper, and part of a two-man bomb squad, captured while setting off the device inside Gaza City. His partner died, and he's now on death row, awaiting execution.
I didn't come here to kill Muslims.
But you must have heard within the ISIS community that you were killing people, because people were being blown up.
Yes, I know this, but they don't kill all people.
What did you think about killing anybody?
They don't kill everyone. Only infidels.
He's just 24 years old and tells us he has no regrets. Like so many, he travelled the sea route from Yemen. But the Somalis admit out of hundreds of foreign fighters that they've killed in the past few months, they've no idea how many have returned to their homelands, ready to wreak terror. Alex Crawford, Sky News in Puntland, Somalia.
And the full-length documentary, Hunting ISIS, A Warning from Africa, is available to watch on demand. Scan the QR code on your screen. That'll take you to the documentary on the Sky News app. And there's more from Alex Crawford on the latest episode of the Sky News Daily podcast. She speaks to Neil Patterson about the rise of ISIS and what it means for the UK. You can listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts from. New research has found that the number of people whose lives or property is at risk of wildfire has surged in the last 2 decades. Analysis by an international team of scientists found a combination of climate change and population movement into rural areas is driving the increase. Sky Science correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
Wildfires have smashed records this year. Los Angeles had the most destructive inferno in its history. In Spain, smoke pollution reached the highest levels in a quarter of a century, and in Turkey, thousands of people fled their homes. Now, new research analysing trends over 2 decades has shown there's been a 40% rise in the number of people at risk. And it's not just because of heat and drought from a changing climate.
In certain parts of the world, we're also seeing people migrating more and more into areas that are fire-prone. We're seeing that, for example, in the Western US, where we see this very idyllic, romantic image of living closer to nature. And that's a trend which is essentially putting people closer to fire and closer to fire-prone landscapes.
Scientists identified 18.6 million recorded fires between 2002 and 2021, with a total of 440 million people affected. And while fires in Europe and North America grab public attention, 85% of the people affected are actually in Africa. But it is the growing intensity of fires close to communities that is causing concern. Researchers say there needs to be more warnings of risky activities like barbecues in drought conditions, and landscapes need to be carefully managed with dry vegetation burned off in small, controlled fires rather than letting it build up to provide fuel for an inferno. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and editor of The Courier, David Clegg. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Eye. Its headline, Starmer faces growing unrest over record asylum claims. We'll be right back, do stay with us.